Today, it's double the fun with a two-parter. Up first, 2024 Reset and Chase Young. And a little later this afternoon, my favorite subject, Taysom Hill. It looks like in 2024, the Saints are kind of positioning themselves for some type of reset, um, both with the roster and the contract salary situation. Um, right off the bat, they somewhere in the neighborhood of 21.7 to possibly $22 million of dead money is getting taken off the books by parting ways with Andrews Pete and Marcus May. Just those two alone, not counting any of the subsequent moves that they'll be making. Um, and on top of that, they've had a very measured approach so far to free agency. And what I mean by that is already discussed in episode 2 about Willie Gay being like a very good addition to both the roster based on his abilities and also the salary situation based on the contract that you were able to bring him in on. In a very similar move, not quite as dynamic with the possibilities of Willie Gay, apparently Mickey Loomis also listened to episode 2 and did not go nuts with bringing in a veteran quarterback to back up Carr. Nick Underhill yesterday tweeted when the news announced that we had signed Nathan Peterman that it was at a minimum salary. So you're not paying for when we to use Drew as an example in 09 Brunell in the push in 2017 to get the second Super Bowl, Bridgewater, Jameis. You kind of have the Chase Daniels here because Carr's the guy. Next few years, we're making the push with, and when you look at the roster and everything that the Saints are doing collectively, the all-in approach the last few years didn't crush the team. The Saints were still competitive, but as Saints fans, we were disappointed because each of the last 3 seasons, as the seasons progressed, they were still talking, hey, look, we just have to make the playoffs and anything can happen. And we were, well, no, you said we were close and we were going all in, which as a Saints fan, I personally took as, hey, we're making the playoffs. What we're really doing is trying to make the Super Bowl push one more time. And that never materialized. So I think this reset kind of looking at, hey, let's clear the books as much as we can. Let's get the value back in the players that we need to get to with these free agent signings. And when we have a possible talent as Willie Gay, let's see if we can work that in. And it's just not a one and done type deal because it doesn't sound like from either side that's necessarily what the 1-year deal means. But also, we're not overcommitting to bringing him in and he's making the difference to winning which would be his 3rd Super Bowl in his 5th year if we could actually pull it off. And then Peterman, you're the backup. We've got Haener coming, hopefully. We'll see if that develops. I mean, perfect world, Haener beats out Peterman and shows enough that, hey, we're fine at backup with the 2nd-year, 4th-round pick. Cedric Wilson being signed last night also, that veterans receiver we need in the receiver room, kind of with those 3 young up-and-coming talents. Been in the league since 2018, in Dallas, in Miami, has seen playoff appearances with both teams. In Miami, Mike McDaniel was another former Shanahan protege So he's even had some experience in McDaniel's version of the Shanahan system in Miami. So I think all that adds up to what we were kind of looking for, bringing in that veteran receiver. And as far as on the field, I know he can play anywhere in the inside, outside in the receiver position. He's around 6'2", 200, so he's got some good size to him. So even on the field, it's not like we're just bringing in. We're definitely not bringing in a number one receiver, but we're also not bringing in a glorified coach. If I'm making it sound like that, no, he's got some football in him. He always has, and it should be. We're still going to be relying on major production from Olave, Perry, and Shaheed, obviously, but I feel like he could fit the bill as that kind of mentor player that you need in the receiver room. I'm the word reset. I think is a curious one because this has kind of been bannered around um, even before free agency started in the offseason. You know, when the salary cap numbers were announced by the NFL and we were tens of millions over by far. The word reset, that's the first time I've really heard anybody talking about not blowing it up because I just don't think in today's NFL you got a shot if you're going to try to blow the whole thing up. Um, Years ago, there were teams that went, yeah, that's it. Boom. Um, Basically, for all intents and purposes, tanking for a high draft pick, clearing out the money, the roster, everything, and then rebuilding. And some were able to pull it off. I think that would be a hard road to hoe in the modern NFL. But if you look right across the division at Tampa Bay, they were in a very similar situation with the Saints, except for the fact they actually won their Super Bowl. They made it and won their Super Bowl that they were pushing all in for with their Hall of Fame quarterback. But when their Hall of Fame quarterback retired, there was there was no indication anywhere. In fact, I don't know this for sure, but I think Tampa Bay had already anticipating prior to Brady's retirement the season before, had kind of started scaling back the reset with letting some veterans walk, or I know they had some other retirements from older players they had brought in for the Super Bowl push. They just, hey, look, we're going to eat the dead money, move on. And when Brady retired, it was, hey, we're going to reset this. We don't have a top tier roster. We have still a lot of good players here. You look at their receivers, their linebackers, their safeties, their offensive line, which had been very good, got slightly decimated and off kilter, and they go get Baker Mayfield on a bargain, hire a new offensive coordinator who is an inventive type guy, and suddenly they're making the playoffs because they won a division we were all but handed before the 2023 season kicked off because everybody looked at the Saints and went, well, nobody in that division can compete. Tampa Bay could. And I'm hoping that that this is a result of the front office kind of taking notice what happened across the Gulf of Mexico from us and looked at our roster and go, because I really do believe this, that currently the Saints from top to bottom as a roster are in better shape right now than when Tampa Bay started this process a year ago. And still we're champs, still got to play in a wild card game. So I like this move. I think part of the reset needs to not only be players in salary, it needs to be the organization from top down. The process. What are we thinking? What are we trying to do? The draft. We have not had those great drafts that we had in the starting in 2007 into 2017. There were some bad ones in there, but even the quote unquote bad ones, we would still find some players with value that helped us. And then, we had the occasional awesome, unbelievable, like 2017 draft. Hey, here we go. This is the now we've completed the process and we can push for the all in. Um, so I think the Saints kind of remembered who they are and how they did things the right way to build these. I'm not saying all these moves are going to work. I'm not saying you have all the players you need on the roster at any given position, but I feel better this offseason than I felt looking at what they were saying the last couple off seasons, and then looking what they were actually doing and what they were trying to do and who they were trying to do it with. Um, a reset also means philosophies in the coaching staff and possibly moving on from coaches. Check that box. Um, and I think the defense has proven the last couple of years that if you'd had the offensive woes figured out, you would have at least accomplished their stated goal. You'd have won a division and you'd have played a playoff game. So I have huge hopes that that part of the equation is cleared up. And now we're just talking about right value for the right players, competitive 2024, little luck, and a little of these moves really pay off like we're hoping they will. We get in and win a division title. We get our playoff spot. We start the roll that you saw us from 2017 to 2020, from 2009 to 2011. First time in probably 3 seasons, I really feel like, yes, I see that possibility again. So here's hoping. I feel good, as you can tell, on the whole situation, and I really want to keep seeing that mentality. That hey, correct the problems, make some small that can turn into giant steps forward, and get the machine back on track and moving in the right direction. And before we move on to Taysom Hill, uh, quick word about Chase Young. In my previous episode, uh, mea culpa, I made a boo boo. Um, his knee injury did not, I stated, ended his knee injury did not end his 2022 season. It, in fact, happened ending 2021. His limited games in 2022 was a result with that lingering into the following season. Um, to just a point of clarification, but the overall point was still he was incredible his rookie year. He had the 2 years with the injury issues. Last year he played well on a very bad Commanders team. Finished the season, wound up with the 49ers. Played really well in their rotation because they had a solid defensive line. So it wasn't like the Washington situation where he was um, logging a lot of snaps and really having to be one of the few defenders out there that had a chance to stop anybody. Um, and it culminated. I believe he had 2.5, 3 sacks somewhere around there with his few games in Frisco, and ended it with in the Super Bowl. He was one of the few people all year to sack Patrick Mahomes. Which is kind of an elite moment of himself because Mahomes was either the first or second least sacked starting quarterback in the NFL last year through game one to the Super Bowl. And Young got him. So it was reported yesterday Young was going to be in the building today. And yes, the injury history worries me. But at the same time, we saw 2020. We all saw the end of last year and in that into that Super Bowl run. I know you're not going to likely not be able to get him on a super team friendly deal, but still, that's one I think you have to risk. He's young, even if he's only 75% of what he was his rookie year. That's still bringing a lot of pass rush and a lot of big playability that he showed in his first season and putting it right on that defensive line opposite of Carl Granderson, who played very well last year. So I kind of hope he shows up in the building, that they keep him in the building.